Welcome and thank you for joining us for the launch of our Rethink My Freedoms, Reimagine My Rights, and Realize My Future campaign to challenge the criminalization of young people's sexuality. By criminalization of young people's sexuality, we're referring to the package of laws, policies, and regulations that restrict young people's access to gender and sexuality and sexual and reproductive health, information, services, programming, and advocacy. This package of laws is put in place in the name of protecting young people. However, instead of providing protection, this regulatory framework that varies from country to country and community to community, instead, too often, puts those who are supposed to be protected at risk of discrimination, violence, harassment, extortion, and incarceration. The campaign is co-created by 8 partners, 6 based in South Asia, Ahung in Pakistan, Bondhu in Bangladesh, Hidden Pockets in India, the Youth Advocacy Network of Sri Lanka, YP Foundation in India, and YUA in Nepal, as well as our Asia regional partner, Arrow. We're also collaborating with the Resurge Global Feminist Alliance and the Challenging Criminalization Project of Accountability International. We're pleased to be joined today by a number of these partners. Marisa Viana from Resurge, Sai Geothermai Rachela from Arrow, and Gita Misra from Korea. We'll hear first from Marisa. Marisa, over to you.
Thank you, Susanna. Hi, everyone. My name is Marisa Viana. I'm the Executive Coordinator of Resurge, and along with CREA and Accountability International, we have been working together over the last few months to also develop a campaign that approaches a similar theme of protectionist laws and protectionist approaches to adolescent sexuality and bodily autonomy in Latin America. So our campaign will be launched shortly in November as well, but the idea for the campaign there, in collaboration again with CREA, in exploring the theme of protectionist approaches to adolescent sexuality. And our main aim for the region was to look at 2 ways. One, the shortcomings of protectionist approaches and criminalization to adolescent sexuality, in particular to what Susanna mentioned earlier, what are the deleterious effects that would have in terms of accessing sexual and reproductive health services, information on bodily autonomy, in empowering young people to be able to negotiate their own relationships and understand their bodies and sexualities. And then the second part of it is how do we, as a feminist movement, as activists, continue to look to the state to protect when in fact, and at the same time to punish. So we sit on this tension in terms of on one hand looking towards the state to protect our rights, and then on the other hand to punish when those rights are violated. And we know that the punishment, as built looking at through evidence and case studies, we know that criminalization has not resulted in the type of justice that we're seeking when we're talking about adolescents' rights and sexuality. And so that in a way, it's also, the campaign is aiming to invite feminists from the region and activists and the legal experts to have a conversation interrogating the shortcomings of penal policies and particularly the punitive measures towards for us towards seeking a more comprehensive approach to sexuality and reproductive rights. And the connection there between CREA, between the campaign in Latin America and the campaign in Asia, it is actually bringing more attention to the adolescents, to adolescent sexuality, and then interrogating the protectionist pieces as well.
Thanks so much, Marisa.
Working to advance accountability towards diverse marginalized communities. Accountability International is a partner to various movements, some being the women's movement, LGBTI movement, youth, the HIV movement, and sex work movements, to name but a few, with a bird's eye view on the intersectional matters running as a common thread across these various movements, one of them being criminalization and policing of morality, identity, expression, and choices with our bodies. We conceptualized an intersectional and interdisciplinary focused project we called Challenging Criminalization Globally, otherwise called CCG, as a way to ensure the attainment of the Agenda 2030 aspirations. Development ought to be inclusive if it is to be deemed sustainable. CCG is founded on a very strong principle of collaboration to bring together a wide and diverse community of partners across a diverse array of movements and sectors, working to challenge various punitive laws and policies curtailing the agency and autonomy of our communities, therefore demanding accountability for our lives, human rights, and well-being and dignity. It is with this in mind that we are proud to have partnered on a global campaign under CCG across 3 regions, being Africa, also in Asia Pacific in collaboration with CREA, and in Latin America with our partners at Research. We have gone through a rigorous process to title the African chapter of this campaign as the Simama campaign. Simama being a Kiswahili word translating into stand up or rise up, a call to action for us to collectively stand to challenge criminal provisions that police people's behavior, beliefs, expressions of identity, and or their autonomous choices with their bodies, and as, of course, the resultant multidimensional human rights abuses. Today we join CREA in launching the Rethink My Freedoms, Reimagine My Rights, and Realize My Future campaign to challenging criminalization of young people's sexuality. We say Simama against the criminalization of young persons' sexuality.
Thanks so much. Sai, over to you now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sai, and I'm the Program Director at the Asian Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women. We are a regional women's organization working on gender, sexuality, and sexual and reproductive health and rights of women, young people, and marginalized communities. ARROW supports the challenging criminalization of young people sexuality campaign. Very much because the region hosts 60% of young people, and the right to sexuality is very key, and it has been recognized in international human rights documents. And we do see that access to comprehensive sexuality education and access to SRH services takes us a long way in terms of overall well-being in the region of young people, but also in harnessing the demographic dividend that we always keep talking about in different population and reproductive health and rights discourses. International human rights standards, they recognize young people as right holders, and their right to sexuality is very key. We also need to recognize the evolving capacities of young people, because that is also a core concept that lies within the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And ARROW is very much involved in monitoring young people's sexual and reproductive health and rights. And from our work in the region, what we have seen is laws focused on consent, laws focused on age at marriage. These should not be punishing young people for sexual activity, for consensual sexual activity and non-exploitative sexual activity across similar ages. So many of the countries in the region actually criminalize sex outside of marriage, and this has implications for young people seeking SRH services, sexual and reproductive health and rights services, including access to safe abortion services and access to STI, HIV services. So at the core of the matter, we would see that we would like to put forward that criminalizing sexuality should be looked at from a nuanced perspective. We need to respect the evolving capacities of young people, and at the end of the day, young people's access to comprehensive sexuality education would help us enable young people, especially adolescents, enable their agency to consent or not to consent for sex, and puts young people at the core of decision making. And that should be the way to go forward as we move ahead in addressing criminalization of young people, sexuality. Thank you.
Thank you, Sai. Geeta, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I am Geeta, Executive Director at CREA. And what I thought I would use my 2 minutes to do is to just talk about why decriminalization has become a priority for CREA, specifically around young people, but I think more in general around women and communities, women with disabilities and other communities in which the impact of criminal law seems to be greater and looks very different than for other people. So I think there are just 3 points I wanted to make around why CREA is focusing on decriminalization or honing in on why criminalization of young people's sexuality should not be something that activist groups, feminist organizations, women's rights organizations should focus on and really advocate for more decriminalization. I think my first point is around the fact that we need to really understand the difference between what criminal law does to people and their lives. Criminal law, leaves a lot of footprints in terms of the state intervening in in issues that allow people to have more control over their lives and as well as make choices about their lives. And I think that as feminist organizations, this ambivalence around having the state step in and do something that will protect us, that will affirm our rights. There is an ambivalence that where, moving towards criminal law and having the state intervene and provide us rights is something that CREA has been very interested in over the years, because we believe that even though it might look attractive, in the end, criminal law, especially around sexuality, is not necessarily going to deliver on the rights and the whole package of rights that young people need and all people need. I think the second is how a kind of a conceptualization that if we criminalize something for doing something bad, there'll be more protection for young people, there'll be more protection of rights, and this nexus between trying to work on violence against women or gender-based violence through the law and kind of enlarging this discourse that somehow the law delivers is something that we've been challenging over the years, because very often you can begin to ask for something in the law and you might end up in a worse place because criminal law invokes many different stakeholders in the state apparatus, and you really don't know what you're going to get and what based on what you ask for. Very often we have not interrogated what it means to have a criminal record, what it means to be in the criminal justice system, in prison, in jail, in systems that actually are not places where, even if we were to say, yes, let's try to work with the criminal justice system, it's what we would want to work on. I think my third piece is around young people, and I feel like there are many subtle ways that young people's sexuality is creeping into the criminal justice system, and we need to ask ourselves whether it's an approach that we need to look at. So one is, which you have all talked about, is around sexuality education. What young people can say, who they sleep with, what kind of sex they're having, who their partners are, there's a whole range of things that are being criminalized, and we need to figure out how we work on that aspect. The second is, the age of consent. The age of consent becoming, increasing for young people, and when they can begin to be more autonomous beings that are capable of consent. And these kind of ages differ based on whether you're heterosexual, homosexual, which country you live in. But by and large, an increasing trend that says, it's better to have sex when you're older. So let's criminalize people who are, younger and kind of breaking these boundaries. I think the third is looking at issues of, abortion and things that happen within the context of marriage and family. So when young people are also given rights and not criminalized, it has to be within the context of getting married or having, so I think there's a whole bunch of issues around young people's sexuality where we really need to be careful as activists and organizations when we are advocating for a criminal approach or to sexuality. And I think in India, one specific example, and Ishani can speak to it very recently, is around the abortion issue, but also around why sexual harassment is suddenly being, many people are advocating that sexual harassment become a criminal offense. Are we putting sexual harassment and rape in the same category? I mean, these are questions that we need to ask. And I think what Kriya is trying to do is bring in this aspect into all of its other programs. I will stop there.
Thanks so much, Geeta. And thank you all. Just to close, we wanted to say that the campaign will be conducted primarily online and through social media, with different partners featured each week and with new content available every day. Check us out at www.challengingcriminalization.kriyaworld.org. Thanks to all of you on the panel, to those of you who are tuning in, and thank you to Ishani Cordero and Stuti Tripathi for their work on this campaign. And we invite everybody to join us. Thanks very much.